Ever since the Wright Brothers first took flight in 1903, people have been trying to invent the next best type of plane. And there are some pretty wild designs out there. Join me for today's video as we take a look at 15 incredible concept planes. Number 15. Airbus Maverick. Kicking off this list is an amazing future plane design from the folks at Airbus. They've brought us plenty of quality aircraft to date, many of which we've all flown in, so it should make sense to see that they've thrown their name into the hat with their Maverick plane. Short for Airbus Model Aircraft for Validation and Experimentation of Robust Innovative Controls, the Maverick looks like it can cut right through the wind, foregoing turbulence altogether. But the new Airbus's design is pretty tough to miss because the entire aircraft basically looks like one big giant wing and a missing fuselage. The Maverick is a pretty big risk for the company because we all know that humans are creatures of habit and hate deviating from many of the designs that we're used to. And if tickets for the Maverick went on sale tomorrow, chances are for every person waiting in line to buy one, 2 more would steer clear. But on the flip side, the blended wing design is meant to cut down drastically on fuel consumption and carbon emissions, which is always a good thing. Instead of resting beneath the wings, the Maverick's 2 engines have been attached right to the rear stabilizer at the top of the aircraft, which will also allow for a smoother airflow over the plane. The Maverick design was revealed in 2020 at the Singapore Air Show, but will probably need a lot more time in the lab before we see one of these flying overhead. Number 14. TBW. If Airbus has already made it to the list, then you know Boeing is going to be right behind them. Another concept plane with the mouthful of a name is the Boeing Transonic Truss-Braced Wing, but you can just call this one TBW. And while this one at least looks like the airplanes we're accustomed to today, it still managed to thrust basic design into the future. Much like the name would imply, the TBW comes complete with a truss bracing on the wings. It's a strange-looking design, but the designers have claimed that this truss feature lets this new Boeing model fly higher and faster than those without it. And in this day and age, faster is always a good thing. But these significantly longer wings also make the TBW far more aerodynamic than its predecessors, allowing it to cut through the headwinds and ride those tailwinds even harder at a flying speed of Mach 0.8. But the wings are also ultra-thin, making them more akin to that of a bird's wings. This thing manages to put a futuristic spin on a classic design without making it look like it's flown here from the future to show us a better way, which frankly makes it much more accessible to the average flyer. Number 13. Hero Zero. Sometimes, when it comes to planes, you need to take a zero and turn it into a hero. But in the case of this next aircraft, it's a hero that leaves us with 0 carbon emissions. The Hero Zero Emissions airplane is one of the most interesting-looking concept planes you'll ever see, with its one-of-a-kind T-shaped body. The Hero Zero was designed and developed by Joe Doucette with the intention of making this the Tesla of the skies. And from the looks of it, it looks like he's on the right track. The real test will come when the thing takes to the air, but until then, all I can do is hope, wait, and appreciate the thoughtfulness behind it. And because it's been compared to Tesla by the designers, you can bet that the Hero Zero is a totally electric and emissions-free aircraft. You can certainly hope to see a whole fleet of these in the near future, but this is yet to fly off the drawing board, and there's really no launch date in sight. But I guess we can all dream in the meantime. The Hero Zero Missions aims to use batteries and electric generators to power the quite literally everything on the plane, from in-flight entertainment to the 3 rear-mounted propellers. Number 12. Flying V. This concept plane is dedicated to everyone who grew up with Coach Bombay and the Mighty Ducks, taking its name from the highly aerodynamic V formation used by flocks of birds. The Flying V was cooked up by the folks at KLM Royal Dutch Airlines. This is another concept plane that looks like one giant wing, but this time around, passengers are going to be sitting in the aircraft's wings instead of the long cylindrical cabin. The design concept is certainly innovative, with the shape of the plane and the location of the engines making for a smoother and more eco-friendly experience. But this is another example of something that only exists in the minds of its creators. The mock-ups do look pretty great though, and if everything goes according to plan, the Flying V could help lead the vanguard of fuel-efficient vehicles because of its ability to fly longer distances using far less fuel. It should come as no surprise that the commercial airplanes can weigh about 100,000 pounds alone and require another 4,000 pounds worth of fuel to get them from point A to point B. But because the KLM Flying V concept weighs significantly less, it will require much less fuel to get it going as it glides on the wind currents. Number 11. Eads Volt Air. Not only is the Eads Volt Air one of the most interesting and unique concept planes, but it also just happens to be one of the greatest plays on words of all time. The Eads Volt Air is a reminder that we must all cultivate our garden, only this time our garden is planet Earth. This concept plane is a fully electric passenger plane that looks like an old submarine that was fused together with an airplane. The design was pretty tough to take your eyes off of, which is exactly what they wanted. The Eads Volt Air is entirely battery-powered, and if all goes according to plan, which we could be riding high in one of these big guys as soon as 2035. And while that may sound like ages, you have to remember that time flies. And because the Eads Volt Air's single rear-mounted engine that looks like the giant fan of a swamp boat is all it's working with, you can bet your bottom dollar that this aircraft will be incredibly light. But that also means it's significantly smaller than something like a Boeing 747 and will only be able to accommodate up to 70 passengers at a time. That may be a small number, but just think of how quickly the boarding and onboarding process will be here. Number 10. A350H Airliner. Alright, we've seen some pretty futuristic designs already. The next concept plane on this list really takes the cake, looking like it was plucked from an old arcade game and dropped right into our laps. The A350H Airliner looks a little too much like a dolphin, but also has the potential to be the future of flying. And I'm not just saying that, because unlike so many other aircraft, both those in existence and those still in the concept phase, the A350H Airliner doesn't need a runway to take off. Nope, this baby is taking off and landing completely vertically. Meaning the days of sitting on the tarmac for hours on end with no relief in sight are over. And wouldn't be an airplane of the future if it relied on fuel either. But instead of running on batteries, the A350H Airliner will be powered by cryogenic hydrogen it keeps stored in its high-pressure tanks. This concept plane is sounding more and more sci-fi by the minute, but perhaps science fiction is also what implants these types of forward-thinking and eco-friendly ideas in our minds in the first place, and really gives us an ideal to strive for. And if this plane really does manage to take off, then we'll all be in for one wild ride. Number 9. Seastall VLJ. While companies like Boeing, Airbus, and Lufthansa manage to keep the designs of their concept planes within the realms of what seems realistic, people like Thomas Brothers Gift have taken their designs to the next level and maybe even a few steps beyond that. He's managed to create a concept plane known as the Seastall VLJ, which looks like an old computer mouse with wings. And although it may look a bit silly, it's even more awesome. Short for short takeoff and landing, very light jet, the Seastall is a lot more than just an airplane. It's a seaplane, meaning this thing can take you just about anywhere. And while you won't be seeing one of these making a cross-continental flight, the Seastall VLJ can make for the very perfect private jetliner for the rich and famous, looking to just get away from it all and enjoy the seascape. The cabin's small, only able to accommodate up to 8 passengers plus the pilot, but it's the 2 skiffs underneath that really make it stand out. When it comes to something like the Seastall VLJ, there's more than meets the eye, and just because it's a seaplane doesn't mean it can take off or land on the nearest runway, meaning this plane of the future excels at land, sea, and air. Number 8. Synergy Aircraft. When you have good synergy with another person, you can just tell, and the same could apply to concept planes, which is why the Synergy Aircraft is going to be your favorite entry on this list. The incredibly unique Synergy Aircraft is designed by John McGinnis, and it's said to use just 10% the fuel of a regular jet plane of the same size. That's not much fuel at all. But despite the design and futuristic promises, this concept plane isn't an electric aircraft and won't fly nearly as fast as your average passenger aircraft. But flying at about 40 miles an hour with space for just 5 in its cabin, it's more of a personal craft, meaning you can fly this between vacation homes with some friends. But isn't something like this going to be loud, especially when you're sitting so close to the engine? Well, not here. The Synergy Aircraft is designed to be incredibly quiet, meaning the folks inside can have a conversation at normal levels because the craft uses a smaller rear propulsion system, laminar flow aerodynamics, and lower prop tip speeds. But what really stands out here is the tail design, which uses a patented double box tail configuration. The only real question here is who is brave enough to step inside one of these small but mighty planes. Number 7. Monster Jumbo. We've all been inside a jumbo jet, but one designer has managed to take that concept and turn things up to 11. This concept plane is lovingly referred to as the Monster Jumbo and was created by Phil Pauley, an award-winning software company known for its eccentric and sometimes quirky digital solutions. So it should make sense that their next big thing really is, well, big. Their Monster Jumbo is a dual-winged commercial airliner designed with not one, not two, but 4 decks to shove in as many passengers as humanly, or maybe even inhumanly, as possible. Jumbo jets are only getting larger, but the Monster Jumbo really is something else, and it'll be tough to compete with it because it's designed to accommodate 1,500 people at a time and capable of flying halfway around the world without the need to refuel. And if this thing eventually makes it to production, it's gonna be the largest airplane in the world by a long shot. The thought of sharing an airplane with that many people may sound daunting, but what it really comes down to is its fuel efficiency. If airliners can get this many people on one flight, then that means fewer flights throughout the day, which means less air traffic, fewer chances of collisions and mishaps, and fewer nasty fuel emissions. Number 6. Progress Eagle. When you see the concept plane that is the Progress Eagle for the first time, it's tough not to ask something like, what exactly is going on here? It certainly is a unique design, but trust that there is method to this madness. The futuristic plane is designed by Oscar Vinals in the hopes that this will mark the future of jetliners. For starters, it's capable of carrying up to 800 passengers at a time over its 3 decks, which is about twice the passenger capacity of your average yet popular Boeing 747. And because the future will be emissions-free, the Progress Eagle looks to live up to its name by being eco-friendly with its 6 hydrogen fuel engines, the rear electric wind generators, and even solar panels. This thing is built like it's ready to go, managing to rely on every outlet imaginable to get from point A to point B without hurting our Mother Earth. Vinals has said that he plans to craft the Progress Eagle using materials like titanium, aluminum, graphene, carbon fiber, ceramics, and finally a memory-shape alloy, making this not only an incredibly light aircraft, but unlike anything we've ever seen before. Number 5. Spruce Whale. So far, we've seen concept planes that take their design inspirations from existing aircraft, sci-fi spaceships, and even a dolphin. But there's one more member of the aquatic kingdom that dwarfs these designs in comparison. The Spruce Whale is an insane concept plane that looks to replicate the size, scale, and look of a whale, and slap some wings on it too. This concept comes from the mind of Randy Alendra and certainly offers a unique glimpse into the future of aviation. Alendra has said that their design is so futuristic that the necessary materials to create such a whale of a plane don't even exist yet, and the technology it takes to fly likely won't be a reality for another century. So even if the Spruce Whale does come to fruition, Alendra won't be alive to see it. So how does something like this move about? Well, the Spruce Whale, which looks like a half dirigible, half starcraft, will forego the typical fuselage for a mechanism that utilizes helium to keep it afloat and propelling forward. And even more outlandish is the fact that it will be using its rear-mounted energy converter module to harvest the wind's power, meaning the higher and further it flies, the more output it will produce. Again, if the Spruce Whale is ever created, it will be long after we're gone. Number 4. AS-2 Supersonic Private Jet. Who out there remembers the Concorde, the supersonic jet that ripped through the skies and brought passengers from New York City to London in less than 3 hours? While the Concorde may have been retired in 2003, there are people who are trying to bring it back, only better. Known as the AS-2 or the Son of Concorde, this concept plane is a supersonic private jet that will let you start your day with a bagel in New York and then grab some lunch in London all on the same day. While there have been supersonic commercial planes, the AS-2 is looking to be the first ever of its kind within the private sector. This concept is part of a joint project between Airbus and Ariane Corp. While it may sound a little too good to be true, they've allegedly already secured their first customer back in 2015. When it goes into production, the AS-2 will cost $120 million to make, and so far 20 have already been ordered, which is kind of wild. But don't expect to be sitting on a cramped flight on board this thing because the supersonic jet can only carry up to 12 passengers at a time, but has no issues reaching a top speed of Mach 1.5 without even breaking a sweat. But don't expect to see this on the market until at least 2023. Number 3. The Boom. So here comes the boom. With the help of Virgin Atlantic, a small Colorado-based startup is looking to create its own supersonic commercial aircraft they like to call the Boom. This concept blows the original Concorde out of the water, shaving off about 30 minutes from the original's transatlantic trip, and will get you around the world in just under 5 hours as it travels at a top speed of Mach 2.2. But how much is something like that going to cost? Well, a one-way ticket is going to run you about $5,000. Making it accessible to the upper echelon of business society. And the Boom airplane itself is already at a $2 billion price tag to build. And that's if they even decide to go through with it. But if they do, the prospect of putting everyday people back into the cabin of a supersonic commercial airliner is gonna be epic. Number 2. Airbus A321 XLR. When it comes to making top-of-the-line airplanes, the folks at Airbus really know what they're doing. They introduced their A321 XLR back in 2019 at the Paris Air Show, boasting that it can take to the skies with a range of 5,500 miles, blowing their predecessors out of the water by a long shot. They're able to do this because the concept offers a third fuel tank, which also allows the XLR to travel up to 10 hours without needing to stop and refuel, and still cutting their fuel burn per seat by about 30%. Not bad. The A321 XLR concept is going to be the perfect addition for commercial airliners who are looking to cut costs but raise efficiency. The only real catch for passengers, though, is that this concept is a narrow-body plane, so ideally these seats are going to have to be wider and offer a little more legroom, especially if they can cover even longer distances. Number 1. Spaceliner. Space is the place. Companies have been claiming to one day offer commercial flights to space for what feels like forever, and even billionaires seem to be entering the space race as well. But one German company is looking to make space travel a bit more realistic. And while you won't be zooming up to the moon for a vacation, you can certainly expect to get from London to Melbourne in about 90 minutes, or Paris to San Francisco in less than an hour, while traveling at 25 times the speed of sound. It's an incredibly ambitious concept that will put passengers through time and space at Mach 5, or 5 times the speed of sound. The folks at the Space Launcher Systems Analysis, or SART, have been putting in the hours of their spaceliner for nearly 2 decades now, with the goal of creating a hypersonic craft that can carry up to 50 passengers at a time, up into space and then around the globe at breakneck speeds. It certainly sounds like an amazing idea, and with more and more people heading to the stars, it does at times feel like it can soon be a reality. The Spaceliner concept calls for 11 rockets to propel the vessel into orbit, 9 of which are for the vertical booster stage, and just 2 for the passenger stage as it circles the Earth. And once those 9 boosters kick in, the passenger craft breaks from the booster rockets and flies totally autonomously, meaning you won't be seeing an influx of pilots entering NASA's space program anytime soon. In all, the Spaceliner will reach an altitude of about 50 miles high. And what goes up must also come down, so the craft quickly goes into a gliding descent towards its destination. And you can bet that something as futuristic as this isn't going to be as environmentally friendly as it can be. And the smart folks over at SART are working to make their Spaceliner run on liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen propellants, meaning the only emissions it will leave in its wake is water vapor. Watch our Vehicles playlist for more top 15 videos about amazing vehicles. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best vehicle videos.